So I did this up as a prototype just to make sure I could get everything to fit correct, and the process or the methodology of getting it in there. It's a little bit larger than I wanted, so I reduced the size by 15%, and I've cut the circles that go in the middle. I'm going to alternate between black and white and black as it goes around the bowl. So I've cut the small circles out of both of them. I've cut a few extra. I'm going to cut this out so that I can drum sand the back off. So I applied tape to the back sides of these to hold the circles in place as I get close to sanding all the way through. I'm going to drum sand them both together. The next step is to cut pocket holes for those smaller circles to go in. So I cut all the pockets and I sanded off any remnants that might get in the way of gluing. The circles, I popped them all out, but I did not bother to sand the top. I'm going to basically push them in this direction, so that'll stick out, and then I'll sand that when I'm all done. But I'll start gluing in, and I'll show a little bit of that. So they're all glued in. I did put some wax paper down to catch the glue drippage, and I tapped each of them with a hammer just to make sure they were bottomed out. But they're all glued up. I'm going to let that glue cure for probably an hour, and then I'll cut the shapes. But again, I have to maintain the zero. I moved it off, but I have not changed the zero, and the CNC is still. So the CNC finished cutting all the shapes, and I'm gonna, since this glue isn't totally cured, I'm gonna let it sit overnight before I drum sand this surface and then sand off the part that's missing. I'll go ahead and take it off and then trim the board. So that's all I'm gonna do until tomorrow. So I have trimmed this piece, and I'm going to start by drum sanding this top side just to get it level, because it's not flat now, and take off these extra pieces. Then I will put tape over the face of it, flip it over, and drum sand the other side. So on each one of these, I wrote which piece it's supposed to be. There's shapes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 and 4 are identical. They're just circles. But I put the numbers on partly because theoretically 2 and 3 should be the same as 5 and 6 upside down. But that's not the way I did the prototype. So this is the top. And because it's got this flange on it from when I stopped the drum sanding early, so I didn't mess any of them up, I'm going to use the disc sander just to clean this up like this one is. And then I'll hand sand the edge just so there's nothing that can snag when I go to glue them in. I'll show a little bit of it. I have all the pieces cut out ready to go into the feature ring. This will be the background for the feature ring. It's figured sapelli. And I'm going to start by cutting pocket cuts for circles 1 and 4, which are the perfectly round ones. And then I'll do the next 2 circles. So I cut the holes for 1 and 4, which are the horizontal ones. I'll put a better copy of this in the video, but basically 1 and 4 go that way, 3 and 6 are this way, and then 2 and 5 are the last ones. So I have to glue up 2 of those in each of these 3 rings and 2 of those in each of those, and I'll have 2 left over. Okay, so I have pieces 1 and 4 glued in. I wanted to back up a little bit and explain why I'm doing it this way. This piece in the middle is fairly small. If you try to cut out all 6 circles, odds are it's not going to do well. So by gluing these 2 in, I've secured the middle piece. My next step will be to go ahead and cut those next 2 circles, and then I can put the whole thing together. So I have the final cut gun with the Pac-Man mouth cut and the pocket hole for the pieces to go in. At this point, I am ready to glue everything up. So with glue, and then push them down, and the same with 2 and 3. Okay, I've got all the circles glued in, and I'm gonna try ripping this board. I only want it to be 2 3/4 inch high. Okay, for those of you who were paying close attention, I only had 6 segments, so I had to make some more. Plus I didn't like the fit on 3 of them, so I made more. So I have 8 segments ready to cut now. I have a mark topped on the right edge of each segment, and I'm going to line it up on the miter saw with a clamp to hold it flat against the fence and flat down and make a good cut. I'll show one cut. So I'm going to continue to cut the right side of each segment, and then I'll come back and show how to do the left side. Okay, for the left side, I had to change the angle of the saw, obviously, but I have set up a stop block, and I have a wedge of the same angle that I cut off to try to give a solid base for it. And I've got the clamp set tight. So I've got a mark on the left side. I only marked one because I'm going to use a stop block for all the rest. So I'll show a cut or two. So the final test was to make sure all the segments fit together well, and they do. I am going to add some splines of Wenge in between. So I have the wedgie sled set for 90 degrees. I've played around and I got the spline to be exactly pretty close to 0.4. So I am going to go ahead and cut the other 7 splines. While I was ripping the feature ring width, I went ahead and ripped a piece of Wenge to the same width. So I'm going to cut the splines. I'll show a couple cuts. Okay, so there is the feature ring ready for glue up. I will double check. Okay, it's about 8 1/8, which is fine. So I have the segments cut for the accent rings, which are going to be a little thicker than a normal accent ring. But I am trying to get a hole in the middle where I'm going to put a circle of maple. And I pushed this segment all the way up against it. The first one I had marked in the center so I could get it good, and then lock it down. So my hole now will be right in the center, and I'm just going to repeat this process for all 32 of the segments for both accent rings. I'll show drilling one hole. So there it is, hole right down the middle. Well, I glued these two rings together earlier with the holes all drilled in it. Ideally, I should have glued in these first, but I had the CNC still cutting on them, and I wanted to get these together so I could drum sand them tomorrow. So I'm going to glue them in after the fact. I did not remove this flange, and it's a good way to set them in there. So I am putting together the pieces of the Round We Go bowl. So I've been doing some turning on this bowl, and I am ready now to add the last two rings on. So I've been working the Round We Go bowl, and I had a few holes I needed to fill and got those filled and sanded, and then put the 2 coats of friction polish on it. It is ready to get waxed. I'm going to put 2 coats of carnauba wax on and then cut it off. I won't show those on the video.